The judge thought it was just a nickname. He didn't realize he'd just mocked the man who once commanded life and death from the skies. The courtroom was supposed to be quiet that morning. Routine cases, routine faces. But when Daniel Reese walked in, carrying his little girl's worn-out pink backpack in one hand and a folder in the other, silence followed him like a shadow. Before I tell you what happened next, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I love knowing who's listening. The judge leaned back in his chair, his smirk just a little too proud, his voice echoing through the room. So, Mr. Reese, you used to be in the Air Force, right? What was your call sign? Daniel looked up, calm, tired, but composed. Shadow Hawk, he said quietly. The judge chuckled, shaking his head. Shadow Hawk. Sounds dramatic. You planning to fly over this courtroom too? Laughter rippled among a few lawyers in the back. But those who looked at Daniel closely saw something shift behind his eyes. Not anger, not pride, but something deeper. The silence that followed wasn't normal. It felt like the air itself was holding its breath. Daniel wasn't just any single dad. He was a man who'd once led rescue missions in mountains so cold they burned your lungs. A man who'd seen comrades fall and had to fly home, pretending the weight on his heart wasn't heavier than his gear. But none of that mattered now. All he wanted was custody of his daughter, Lily. She was 7, small for her age, with freckles like raindrops across her nose and a laugh that could disarm the hardest heart. After his wife's accident 2 years ago, Lily had been his entire world. But today, that world was under threat. His late wife's parents had filed for custody, claiming Daniel was too unstable to raise a child alone. And the judge, Judge Connors, had already shown whose side he leaned toward. Daniel stood, his knuckles tightening around the folder. Inside were years of flight logs, commendations, and letters from those he'd saved. Proof that he wasn't the man the opposing lawyer painted him to be. Mr. Reese, the judge said, flipping through a report. There's a note here about your medical leave. PTSD, is that right? Yes, Your Honor, Daniel said, his voice steady. So you admit you're unstable? Daniel took a breath. No, sir. I admit I've seen things most people shouldn't. And I'm still here, for her. He glanced at Lily, sitting quietly beside her guardian. She smiled at him, but the judge didn't notice the tenderness in that exchange. He only saw a soldier, and a stereotype. As the courtroom murmured, Daniel's attorney leaned closer. Don't take the bait, she whispered. But the judge wasn't done. I just find it ironic, Connors said with a smirk, that a man who calls himself Shadow Hawk can't even keep his own life in the light. For a moment, the world stood still. Daniel didn't move, didn't blink. The only sound was the ticking of the courtroom clock and the distant creak of wooden benches. Then Daniel spoke, not with anger, but with clarity so sharp it made the air tremble. Your Honor, with all due respect, Shadow Hawk wasn't a name I chose to sound cool. It was the name given to me after a night I wish never happened. The judge frowned, confused, but the courtroom was already leaning in. Daniel continued. There was a village in the valley of Nuristan. A call came in, a team of medics trapped under fire. No air cover, no escape route. I was ordered to stand down, but I didn't. I flew in anyway, in the dark, through fog and enemy fire. We pulled out 12 men that night. Only 2 were conscious. He paused. They called me Shadow Hawk because I didn't wait for light to do what was right. The courtroom was dead silent. Even the judge stopped flipping his papers. And I'll tell you this, sir, Daniel said softly. Raising my daughter is the same mission, one you don't stand down from, no matter the risk. A whisper ran through the room. Reporters at the back stopped typing. One of the opposing lawyers closed her notebook. Even the bailiff's stern jaw eased slightly. Judge Connors shifted uncomfortably. The arrogance had drained from his face, replaced by something else, awareness, maybe even shame. Still, he cleared his throat and said, This court deals in evidence, not emotion. Daniel nodded slowly. Then let's talk evidence. He opened his folder. Out came letters, not typed, but handwritten. One by one, he read their headers. From Captain Lewis, rescued 2016. From Sergeant McMillan, recovered 2018. From the families of the medics. Each letter told a story. Each line was a testimony of life saved, of courage in chaos, of a man who didn't give up, ever. Then came the last page, a crayon drawing. Lily's. It showed a man with wings holding her hand. Above it, in a child's messy handwriting, were 3 words: "My real hero." The courtroom was silent again, not out of obligation, but respect. And for the first time that morning, Judge Connors looked like a man who didn't know what to say. Outside, the wind pressed against the tall glass windows. A storm was building, the kind of afternoon storm that could change the air itself. When Connors finally spoke, his tone was different. "Mr. Reese." "I." But Daniel interrupted softly, his voice steady. "I'm not asking for pity, Your Honor. Just fairness. I may not be perfect. I have nightmares. But I also have purpose. And she," he gestured to Lily, "is the reason I get up every morning and face them." The judge swallowed hard. The room could feel the moment shifting, the moral weight pressing down like unseen gravity. After a long pause, Judge Connors sighed, closing the file. "This court finds that the petition for custody by the grandparents is denied. Full custody remains with Mr. Reese." A quiet gasp rippled through the gallery. Lily ran forward, wrapping her arms around her father's waist. Daniel knelt, eyes closed, holding her as if the whole world had returned to its rightful orbit. But as he rose to leave, he turned one last time toward the judge, not with triumph, but mercy. "For what it's worth, sir," he said gently, "call signs aren't jokes. They're reminders of what we've survived to stay human." The judge didn't respond. But as Daniel walked out of that courtroom, even the bailiff straightened, giving him a subtle nod, the kind soldiers give each other when words aren't enough. Outside, the sky broke open, sunlight piercing through gray clouds. Lily squeezed his hand and whispered, "Daddy, are we free now?" Daniel smiled faintly. "Yes, sweetheart. We're free. Because courage doesn't always roar. Sometimes it just stands quietly and refuses to give up. And sometimes the shadows we carry aren't there to haunt us, but to remind us we once flew through darkness and made it home." If this story moved you, let me know in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories of real courage, kindness, and redemption.